Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast based on capturing the consumer voice based around some work we did with a consumer health customer that I actually worked on based in Singapore, looking at the sort of Southeast Asia market. To introduce myself quickly, my name is Robbie Shaw. I'm a data and AI consultant. I'm also the managing director of our Thorogood Singapore office. I've been in Singapore for about 4 years. I came from our London office before that, and I worked across data engineering, data science, machine learning, data visualization projects with customers in medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and consumer goods. You're very welcome to today's webcast. So let me get into it here. So let me give a bit of background on the customer that we were working for in this project. So customer is a consumer health company. Their Asia Pacific headquarters were in Singapore, and they sell over-the-counter health products across multiple different categories. And their direct customers, people that they're actually selling to, are distributors, wholesalers, and retailers. But they're then selling on to actual consumers. So the consumers are the ones driving demand, whether they're buying the products through, say, pharmacies or through large supermarkets, or increasingly online through digital commerce. They actually had designed a brand new strategy, and one of the key levers of that was being able to put the consumer first. So they were living that in action in Southeast Asia. So what they wanted to do was understand if they can improve their products and their brands in the eyes of the local consumer, so that if they can improve the actual products, their consumer demand should increase. So what were they using to better understand the customer in Southeast Asia? Well, they had a number of different options. They could look at online reviews and ratings. They could look at syndicated data that actually aggregated those scores of reviews and ratings together. They could use social listening tools like Sprinkler or Brandwatch to understand saying about them on all the different social media channels. They could do surveys of the healthcare professionals who recommend their products, or just the general consumer population. And then they can commission actual research through, say, focus groups or even one-to-one consumer interviews. It's actually the final one that they did more. So they did most of their research by commissioning consumer interviews. How did that work? Basically, the consumer health company would have a question that they wanted to explore. This question would usually come from, say, the insights team or the marketing team looking to run a particular campaign. But basically, what they would want to understand is a specific consumer group's feelings about a particular category, brand, or even product. So what they would do is they would commission that research with a third-party company. So that company would then go off and host one-to-one interviews across Southeast Asia in English and in the local languages of the local markets. They would digitally capture transcripts from that as well. And then the same company would summarize it. So they'd take the raw transcripts and then they'd summarize it into a more sort of condensed, summarized consumer profile, telling you a little bit about the person, about how they used the product, what they liked about it, what they didn't. And then they would send both the raw transcripts as well as the consumer profiles back to the consumer health company. And then the consumer health company teams, the marketing team or the insights team, would review the output, and that would influence the brand or product strategy or even the marketing campaigns they were planning to run. That's how it all worked. What was the business problem, though, that meant they brought us in to help build a new solution to manage their data, gain better insights? Well, they would run that study, let's say 1 month, but then across 3 months, they're probably running another 2 studies looking into different consumer groups' feelings about maybe a different one of their products or a different one of the categories they operate in. And then over a year, the number of research studies that they do build up. And each of these research studies is going to have hundreds of pages of transcripts and summaries, to the point that whenever you're sort of, say, 5 years in, you've run plenty of studies, you've got thousands of pages of transcripts and summaries, and you've built a real treasure trove of consumer understanding across different ages, the different countries in Southeast Asia, different lifestyles, different brands, etc. So that's an amazing body of knowledge just sitting there in their SharePoint, which meant that if someone had a brand new question about a consumer or about consumer behavior generally, they could probably ask the question, and there's probably key bits or like key nuggets of information within that body of knowledge that can help just answer that question straight away. The real problem, though, is that to get to that golden nugget of information, you're having to dig through quite a lot of other information that would be irrelevant. Even with proficient tagging of documents, there's still just too many documents to go through. And that's what was happening at this consumer health company. Their historical research documents were not being revisited. They knew they were useful, so they'd stored them away and ordered them pretty neatly. but they weren't ever really going back to them when they had a new question about consumer behavior. What did they do instead? They would just commission a new study, which would take weeks to do the interviews, weeks to collate the findings. It would give them a really strong answer. There's no doubt about that. It would answer the question they wanted, but it comes at a pretty high cost. It's weeks until you get that actual answer. Of course, they could say to their teams, okay, you have to manually go through these documents and make sure in the historical research we've done, we're not missing anything that can just answer the question rather than having to make us sort of conduct a new study. They could tell them to do that, but it's still going to take days of their time. It's a pretty mundane task. I know if I was asked to do it, I'd probably try and move company pretty quickly. Additionally, if you can get someone who's willing to do it, it's relatively boring, so they're going to lose focus, could skip over key information. And also, the sort of raw transcripts that contain the key information are in multiple different languages. They could be in Mandarin, English, Bahasa Indonesia, or Bahasa Malaysia. And the problem is that what's the chances of the person who's reviewing it actually being able to understand all these documents, read all these documents, and gain a sort of collective idea about consumer behavior that helps answer the question? It's really unlikely. So if they did do that, it would lead to an uncertain answer. It would take days to receive it. And yes, there's no cost of commissioning a third party, but there is the cost of just that worker's time and what else they could be doing. We worked with them on designing a solution to this problem to let them actually leverage that massive body of knowledge they've built up. The ideal solution was basically something that would allow someone to pose any research question and get a response that's going to provide business value, whether they're on the insights team, marketing team, pricing team. It's got to be accurate. It can't just be made up. It can't be a hallucinated answer. It's got to be based on the consumer research that's already been undergone. It's got to be fast. How fast? It's not just faster than the commission studies they've got. Really, it's got to come in a few seconds. If you think about users and using digital tools, they're used to getting a response in seconds. And finally, it had to be cost efficient. It had to be low enough so that whenever employees are using, they're not discouraged from asking another question. You don't want every time an employee is going to ask a question of the tool, you don't want them thinking, oh, is the answer I'm going to get from this potentially like worth more than the cost that it's going to take to run the models in behind. What we did was we actually built that for them. I'm going to show the demo of what we've done. The demo is a very close copy of the tool we actually built for the consumer health company. In this case, we've used mocked consumer transcripts. And then after showing it, I'll explain what's happening in the background when a user asks a question. I'll also point out all the different places where we can customize the system to refine it and provide a better output, a more refined output that's closer to what the consumer health company wanted, compared to when you just bring in sort of out-of-box solution like Copilot, which you can't really tune in any way. Like I said, it's a close copy of what we built. We built something very similar, but with the consumer health company's branding. This one we've just given Thorogood's branding. But this is the web app interface that users would go to. And they've got two pages here. They've got this chat interface, or they can go to the actual documents to see the documents that are stored here within the tool that's going to be used as sort of the evidence to give them the answer that they want. And just to give you a bit of an idea of what these stories, what these documents look like. Basically, this is what you can see. They're interviewing someone in Vietnam. They're talking about Acetone, which is one of this made-up company's products, one of Thorogood's products. In this case, it's an antacid, like an indigestion tablet. And what it's doing is providing a bit of background about the user, who they are, where they're from, what they like to do, and then how they use the product, Acetone in this case, and what they like and dislike about it. Well, this one's in English. We also have ones in Mandarin and we have ones in Bahasa Indonesia. And they don't all talk about Acetone. For example, this one's talking about Leviosa 360, which is in this world like vitamin supplement. So going back to the chat interface, so with the documents interface, but most of the users are spending their time in the chat interface where they can ask really any question they want about consumer behavior. Just before I ask the question, I'll just run through some of the other options. They have the ability to filter. So in this case, I'm going to set the brand to Acetone. So I could choose any of these brands here, but I'm going to choose Acetone. What that means is basically that whenever this model is going to try and answer one of my questions about consumer behavior, it's only going to use the Acetone tag documents as the evidence that it should refer to. So it saves us having to put, say, Acetone in the actual question itself. We could also do the same for country, and we could do the same for the age group as well. We also have this button which says restrict to my documents only. When it's ticked, when I ask a question, question, the model is only going to respond with information that it can find in the available consumer research documents. If I untick it, it's going to still mostly do that, but it is going to use some of its own wider knowledge that can help with sort of having a wider context. So the example, we actually added this because the consumer health company, one of the main users of it, was saying it would be useful if the sort of tool had a little bit more context on what our competitors' brands were, because really all the consumer research is only really talking about the consumer health company's brands and products. We also have the ability to see chat history as well. So if you got some really good insights, you can click on it and go back, similar to the likes of ChatGPT or any of these other publicly available large language models that people use. So let me ask my first question. I'm going to ask, what do users like and dislike about Acidon? And like I said at the start of the demo, whenever I was first moving to it, I'm just going to run through the demo here to show you and show you how it works. I'll explain what's actually happening when I ask a question when I go back to the slides. So here you can see what do users like and dislike about Acidon. You can see likes, fast relief, convenient, portability. Dislikes, packaging issues, chalky texture, bitter aftertaste, price concerns as well. And you can see these little superscripts after each of the sentences. That's actually a citation to a particular part of a consumer research document. So you can see someone's talking about packaging issues. That's coming from 1, 2, 3, and 5. And you can see the references below. So you can see it's referencing 5 different consumer opinions here. And if I'm interested in, say, the packaging issues, the chalky texture, the bitter aftertaste, I can click on it and then I can go and read the sort of full context around that. So you can see here, this person's talking about the blister packaging, such a pain. I ripped it too hard. The tablets flew out. Chalky texture is another gripe. The aftertaste doesn't help. So you can go and see the full context of what they're actually saying about these negatives about Acidon. And let's say I've asked that first question. I'm in the sort of product packaging innovation team and I want to see, okay, these packaging issues sound like a bit of a worry. I'm going to say, can you expand on the packaging issues? So you can see we can follow up on an answer. So it's going to take the context from before and be able to answer the same question. It's also going to still look for new information. So now you can see we've got 5 new references. These references actually, most of them differ to the references above. So it's bringing in and looking at more information here. So you can see it's got difficulty opening, bulky design, tablet loss, inconsistent quality. So it's answering that pretty well. I'm going to change my persona now and say that I'm the country manager of Taiwan and I want to get more new users picking up our Acidon product and starting to use it. And I'm thinking to do that, I need to really understand how have my current users, how have current consumers of the Acidon product, how have they found Acidon? How did they start using it themselves? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask this question. So unfortunately, I don't speak Mandarin, but luckily Google Translate is here to help. So I'm going to ask, how do Taiwanese users know this brand? And I'm going to ask it in Mandarin because I'm, in this case, based in Taiwan and concerned about the Taiwan market. There we go. So I'm going to get an answer. I'm sure some of you can understand this. As I said, unfortunately, I can't. So I will translate it back. I'll also point out that the references are all coming from a user who's based in Taiwan. And I'm going to translate this back. So I've asked the question in Mandarin. It's only looked at documents, consumer research from Taiwan, and it's actually replied in Mandarin as well. And you can see here, Taiwanese users' awareness of Acidon brand stems from social settings. So someone eating spicy food at an event and them using Acidon, and the consumer who answered seeing that. Advertising, pharmacies and supermarkets, online searches as well. So it's answering pretty well. It's answering in different languages. And then I can go back to English if I want. And what I want to show now is the filters in action. So here I'm going to ask, what do people like about Leviosa 360? So what you can see here is Leviosa 360 is another one of the brands, but we've got that filter set to Acidon. And what it's basically saying is, I don't have any information on Leviosa 360, and that's because we put that hard filter on it, and it's not searching across any of the documents that reference Leviosa 360. So let me remove that filter again and ask the question again one more time. So there you can see, what do people like about Leviosa 360? It's given the likes and it's described some of the reasonings and some of the people and their experience as well with Leviosa 360. And that's great. Now, what I'm imagining is I'm someone in the marketing team, specifically in the marketing team looking at the Indonesia market, and I'm working with influencers to understand and help them put posts up about Leviosa 360 and the fact they use it. And I want them all to use a consistent tagline, but my mind's got blank. I can't think of any interesting taglines to put in. So I'm going to turn to this tool for a little bit of inspiration here. So if I type, please come up with 5 marketing taglines about Leviosa 360. And I'm going to say, please include citations, because I want to provide sort of reasoning behind why it's giving that tagline and citing some of like the user experiences with that product. So here you can see it's given me 5 marketing taglines saying, unleash your energy, feel alive with Leviosa 360, empower your day, 1 tablet, endless vitality. And it's giving me reasons for it. So this tagline reflects users like Ezekiel, inspired by users like Sari, etc. So it's answered that really well. It's given me a bit of an inspiration for taglines. I don't have to use exactly that one. I could then take that off and use it myself, sort of edit it myself. Or I could say, actually, these are all a bit short. I want longer ones. I want shorter ones. I want snappier ones. I want ones that appeal more to Gen Z, whatever you want. In this case, what I'm going to feed back about is more the audience. So I'm going to say, what about if the taglines are only for the Indonesia market? And here what you can see is it's actually providing answers in Bahasa Indonesia. So again, for those who don't speak it, like myself, getting your energy, Leviosa 360, your everyday companion. So it's answered that well. It's given me 5, and you'll notice it's given the explanations as well. But you'll see it's referencing Sari this time for the first one rather than Ezekiel. And what you can see is it's referencing 3 different people in Indonesia. So not only has it translated it to Bahasa Indonesia, it's also taken the Indonesian experiences from the consumer research documents and used those to inform the taglines as well. Hopefully that's given you a good idea of the tool, how it works, what type of things it can answer. Let me tell you just what's going on in the background whenever I ask any of those questions. So the user asks the question, their question is turned into different search terms, and those search terms are then searched across the documents to find the most relevant documents. We can filter the number of documents that is searched across just by using, say, like that acid-on filter. So if the acid-on filter's on, we're going to just be searching across a smaller subset of the documents, only the ones tagged with acid-on, similarly with age and country, etc. Then that hybrid search that's being run, that's a mix of a keyword search and a vector search. A vector search is about similarity of meaning. So like indigestion and heartburn would be given similar scores and would come up in searches where you're searching for one term, the other would documents with the other would come up. So what we'll do is we'll run that hybrid search and then get the sort of most relevant documents coming from that hybrid search. And those documents are then put into a composite prompt that's a mixture of a system prompt. So the system prompt is what we send to the large language model every time we add in context of the most relevant documents. In this case, we always send the top 5, and we send chunks of those documents. Even though the documents are like 4 pages or sometimes longer, we only send 3-page chunks, as we find that sort of gives the best answers, where it's providing enough context around the search term that's landed that document as relevant, but it's not sort of putting in so much information that it's clouding what's actually being said. We pass in the conversation context as well. So what's been said previously in the conversation, and then we pass the user's actual query, the user's question. So all of that goes to the large language model. So we're basically saying, can you answer this user's question in this way? So in the sort of system prompt, telling it what way to answer it. And we're saying only answer using this context that we've given you in terms of what's been said previously and what's in these most relevant documents. That's sent to the large language model, and then the large language model returns the answer to the user via the web app interface. And the thing I want to call out is that the way we built this for the consumer health company, we didn't just bring them something out of the box. This was a bespoke solution that we were able to tune at multiple different points to get it answering the way that really helps the users in that consumer health company. So it's a much better output than something just out of the box solution like a Copilot, really. So what could we do? We could prepare the prompt for the LLM in different ways. So we could actually change the weightings on the hybrid search. So we could change whether it was a keyword search or a vector search, which had like a higher weighting. We could change the number of chunks that we sent to the LLM via the composite prompt. So in this case, as I said, we sent 15 pages in total. We sent the top 5 search results, and with each we sent 3 pages for context. We could have sent many more. We could have sent many less. We could have changed the size of the chunks as well. So we had a lot of play around that. What we landed on was 5 and 3 works best. We could change the system prompt completely in terms of how we wanted it to answer, the tone we wanted it to take. they're providing us citations, anything like that, we could have changed in the system prompt. In the conversation context, we said, after trying a few different things, we set on 10 being the right number of messages to go back before you lose context. But if we find people are asking a lot of follow-up questions, we could change that. If we find it was bringing in more relevant information, in most cases, we could reduce that, like reduce the conversation context that we brought in. And then with the model itself, we could change an awful lot. So in this case, we used the GPT models. I think it was GPT-4o, but we could have used a different model. We could have used one of the Claude models, DeepSeek, whatever else. We have the ability to switch the model in and out. We could also decide on the max size of response. We could add frequency penalties in terms of how regularly it's using the words. And we could play around with the degree of creativity with a few parameters called temperature, top P and top K. I'll not go into the details of what they do. And we could play around with them to make the large language model more creative or less creative. So you could imagine if you're just using the tool for marketing taglines, you would increase the temperature, increase top P, top K to basically allow the model to be more creative, provide more unique responses. In this case, because the consumer health company was asking sort of more regular questions about consumer performance and they wanted more consistency across people, we really lowered the temperature and made answers more consistent. So we talked before about what was the ideal solution. Did this meet it? In short, yes. We were able to provide deep consumer insights across marketing campaign decisions, pricing decisions, product innovation. It was accurate. You could see that in the citations and people could go and click through to find the sort of real evidence in the document. You could see it got a response in seconds. And what you couldn't see, so you'll have to take my word for it, but the cost of each individual query was tiny. So you aren't going to discourage anyone from asking that maybe sort of more left field question. Plus, if you just run a sort of consumer survey in the way they were usually doing, you get a sort of point in time answer. The real benefit that the people we were working with that the customer pointed out was here you can get the view over time. So you can get, if you've run similar studies 5 years apart, you can say, okay, has seniors' opinions changed about these vitamin supplements over the years? Additionally, you could play around with the parameters to be able to get the actual sort of best output response that you wanted. You could see that language was a barrier where some of the source files could be in a different language. Someone could ask in a different language. You've basically removed the real barrier there of language. And then finally, what we also found was, yes, there are going to be cases where this tool is not able to answer the question because there hasn't been any relevant consumer research done. When we got to that point, what we were saying is to the consumer health company is, yeah, you can commission new research to go and find that answer. And the benefit of that answer is going to be amplified because we can then add that new research back into the tool and it's going to be able to answer many more questions going forward in the future. So that's about the consumer case. Let me just talk a little bit about Thorogood quickly before I end and a little bit about how we can help. So just Thorogood is a global independent data and AI consultancy. We have offices in London, the US, Singapore, Brazil, and India. The majority of our consultancy services are actually building these type of data solutions end to end, all the way from taking data at its source and providing it up through web interfaces or dashboards or whatever else to put data in the hands of key decision makers. And really, we see our value lying in the overlap of business understanding, technology expertise, and understanding of how data works. How do we stay on top of the latest technologies? We partner and we use the leading technologies in the space. So we partner with the leading cloud vendors, Google Cloud, AWS, and Microsoft. We're also a Brick Builders solution partner with Databricks, and we use many other technologies, including a lot of the model developers' models. We use those as well. And how can Thorogood help? Well, in short, your first stop is you can talk to our consultants. If you're interested in the solution we built, we can build a similar bespoke solution for you based on your business needs and based on the information you're trying to extract. Additionally, we can help you with anything else really in the wider data and AI space. My details are up there. If you want to talk to me, that's great. If you know someone else at Thorogood already, please feel free to reach out to them. We're always happy to have just a quick conversation to see what you're thinking and whether there's any way we could help with it. Additionally, if you want some more of our perspectives about projects we've worked on or some of the information we've worked on, like our views on technologies, perspectives on technologies, you can go to thorogood.com/perspectives and see webcasts like this that have been recorded previously. They're all sort of up there on our website. And you can come to events that are coming up as well. So there's a couple events in Singapore that I'd like to promote. So there's one in January in Raffles Hotel. That's sort of our Thorogood Data and AI update, where we present a number of use cases like this. Additionally, then on the 20th of November, we're also hosting a Power BI dashboard in a day in person. It would be great to have people come along to that as well. If you go to thorogood.com/events, you'll see those events there. If anyone's watching who's based in the UK, we also have an event coming up in a couple of weeks, 23rd of October in the Soho Hotel. And that's the same Thorogood Data and AI update event. It's a great event and I really recommend you go, or you refer your colleagues if you know people based in London who'd be interested in data and AI. And with that, thanks for joining. Any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. You can scan the QR code for my LinkedIn, or you can just reach out to me via email, or find me on email, find me on LinkedIn via that link below. But with that, thanks for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.